Hello, and welcome to Pegasus Presents PeggyPods. The Pegasus Resource Consortium is a think tank designed for exchanging ideas on alternative science in the world we live in. It can be located through www.thelivingmoon.com. Join us while we venture into the inner workings and interesting lives of our guests on the show. My name is Dwem, and I will be tonight's host. Joining us in the guest chair tonight is a Pegasus forum member, PlaysWithMachines, known to us as Luke. Luke, I would like to start with who you are and how you got where you are now. Go ahead.
Okay, well, that's a long story. I'll try and keep it short. I was born in 1964 in the East End of London. It's a pretty poor area, it's like the Bronx. We had people like the Cray twins living there down the road from us. I left my family moved down to Kent when I was 6 or 7. And so I went to a big stage school with hundreds of kids, and I hated it. And I skipped about 2 years of school. And when they finally caught up with me, I had to do an IQ test, and it turned out a lot higher than anyone thought. And they sent me they called it gifted. They back in those days, they called it gifted children. And, they didn't give them pills to dumb us down to the rest of the class, like a lot of parents do now, which is totally wrong. They sent me to a special school where all the kids were, what they call them, ADHD.
Right.
And we had special teachers, and it was the best time of my life. I was very lucky to get this. This was run by Cambridge, so I got diplomas from Cambridge, and I was hoping to become scientist of some kind. I discovered Tesla and stuff when I was about 12 years old. When I was 14, I was reading books on particle physics. Yeah, when I left school, they offered me a post at the Ministry of Fisheries and Food in the Ministry, agriculture. And I said, well, no, I'm not. I want to play with lasers and stuff. But reality came in, I had to work because all I had was like a student grant, a lot of money to live on. And I wanted to continue for my RAF service. I wanted to go into the RAF as a radar technician. And they said, yeah, you've got to take advanced level physics and maths. So I went back to college to do that, and I flunked out halfway through because I had big arguments with the lecturers, and became a builder because it paid good money.
Right.
So I worked for about a year or two as a builder, and then I went into engineering. I managed to get a job in a factory, cleaning the machines, sweeping the floor. It took me on as a tool maker. I learned about milling and drilling and tapping and metalwork and welding and three-phase. And then I went into computer steered machines, CNC machines, robots, if you will. And I kind of moved on from there, and I'm now living in Europe as a maintenance engineer or maintenance technician, but I'm actually officially a mechatronic machine build level 3, which is as high as you get. Level 4 is university. I don't have time for that. So I'm officially a machine builder, which to cut it down short means anything that ends in X, I got a diploma in. Electronics, hydraulics, pneumatics, mechanics, you get the picture. So I've always got a good employment. I can always get a good job. Okay, the second part of the question, how did the group...
Yeah, I wanted to know how you got onto Pegasus from wherever you were. I mean, that's quite a story as far as I hear.
It is quite an amazing story. A lot of twists in there. What happened was we was a bunch of YouTubers. I had my first YouTube account, and I put some music videos because I was making electronic music back then, and still do, but more as a hobby. I found guys playing with magnets and coils and kind of the same thing I was doing, and I think, well, this is crazy. We're all doing different things. This one guy's got one that works, one guy hasn't got a clue, and we want to bring this together. All these guys are working on the same kind of thing, and we just need to pull our brains and start making a record, of what works and what doesn't work and this kind of thing. So I started the Inventors Group on YouTube. There's 6 of us. We did the Stan Mayer thing with the HHO in the water. I've posted that on Peggy in the Inventors Group public, so everyone can read it.
Are there still groups on YouTube? Is that group still there? Or?
They're kind of pretty much broken up. I got contact with one or two of them. I mean, we had like Al Witherspoon. It was Howard Johnson's assistant, and you know
Ooh,
Howard Johnson.
yes, I do.
I spoke to him for quite a few years. He was on my original group. I then managed to start my own site called Brainstorm, and we moved the group over there. We had, I think, 25 of us, including a rocket scientist from Australia, a guy called Max Miller, who is running the. He's now actually selling the complete Stan Meyer setup, you know, with the tubes and the special equipment, and he's actually trying to start a company selling that. Another guy was working on thermal electric generators, but he's kind of turned weird on. So we kind of lost a lot of members, and what amazed me, I lost the site, and this is a weird story. I couldn't pay them. Paid for the site for every 2 years using my wife's credit card, and when it came up for renewal, they didn't accept the credit card. So I said, well, I'll send you a check from my bank. No, we don't take bank checks. I'll send you FedEx. I'll send you a gyro check. I'll send you cash in an envelope. They said, no, 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 you can only do it using the pay button on our site. Now, the pay button didn't work. It rejected the card. So I kept sending them emails, please, I need this site. I'll pay you. I'll send you a bar of gold. I'll do anything I can. They just said, no, you've got to use the button. And I said, look, the button doesn't work. Anyway, this went on, and I kept sending mails to one department, and I kept getting in other emails the next day from the other department saying, you know, we see you still haven't paid for the site. We're going to close it down.
Mm-hmm.
By then, I thought, what the hell? Go take it. I got all the files anyway. I downloaded everything. I kept the letters. I kept the addresses of most of the guys. I was on ATS at this time. I still am. I started posting this on ATS and didn't get much of a response. That's when I met Amy.
Amy is Amaterasu Solar.
Yes, and she was there, and we had a lot of great conversations. And sure, you know, I've sort of heard of people like Zorgon and Armap and the rest of our crew that were over on ATS. But it was in the open with a lot of trolling. We had, I was there the moment when Amy was banned, and they just cut her in the middle of a thread, in the middle of a conversation, which was about free energy and like she was pushing with the abundance thing, and I was with her on this, and right in the middle of a conversation, she was just gone.
Right.
And I was upset, and I wrote to the admin ATS, and they said, we don't talk about ex-members.
Easy way out, huh?
Okay, so I tried to carry on that thread about, with the abundance thing, and kind of not mentioning her, and the next minute they were threatening me with, you can't post this, and I thought, what the hell? And I think about 2 days later, Amy got back to me, and she invited me to the Living Moon. It's been like a match made in heaven because, Pegasus Research Consortium do research, right? A lot of it's paper-related research or conspiracies or files or stories. Like Ron said, it's an information clearinghouse. We inventors, we need information.
Okay, you said, as Ron says, for our listening audience, who's Ron?
Ron is Zorgon, who owns Pegasus and the Living Moon. He runs the site. I'm very grateful to him to give me, he gives a lot of members their own space and their own areas to talk on their own subjects. We cover just about any subjects on and off planet. And I kind of see this as a perfect match because now we've got a growing group of inventors. We're working on projects. Pegasus supplies the information and the space to post our stuff, and we take the information and build stuff. So it's kind of a great team, definitely. And I've managed to meet a lot of great people in the last 2 years. It's my home. I'm very happy to be here.
Let me ask you some questions. You mentioned school, work, tooling, maintenance. Can you remember anything in school that you really liked? A teacher or subject? Anything memorable?
Well, it was kind of a wild ride. It was a boarding school. It was like Charles Dickens. We all had uniforms and whipping boys and Sundays and church and all kinds of other shit going on. We had a definite pecking system, bullying order that you'd have in these old. When I was little, everyone would beat me up. And then when I was bigger, I could beat up the little ones, and the big ones would come and beat on me. And, in the last year of school, I was the biggest, and I could beat up everyone. Which is It taught me a lot about giving and receiving and respect and giving orders. You know, that's why I'm this kind of dominating other people. You know, this macho attitude that you see all over the world is pointless. I've learned to give orders and I've learned to receive orders. So I came out of it pretty well balanced. A lot of us came on. A lot of the guys out at school they became pilots and CEOs and lawyers, and I became a builder. And
Well, I've seen a picture of that school, and it's absolutely beautiful. What a
it's
nice looking school.
it was built in 1540 by Henry VII.
Wow.
It was a Pathfinder house during the war. It was a training school for spies.
Right.
The RAF used it for training for some time. It then became a five-star hotel, and then it became a school. It's been closed down since then. But we had some amazing times there. I mean, we used to build little bottles of glycerine and leave them on the oven in the kitchen, and we blew out all the stained glass windows.
Okay. Let me go on to tooling. You mentioned that you studied to be a tool maker. Anything you want to go into that? Any great things that you worked on that we would know by chance?
I built some of the F-16 flight simulator bases. They're a triangle of metal weighing 17 tons. Worked on the refit of the generators for the QE2. I worked on torpedoes. I worked on trains. I worked on boats, bridges. When I was over in Holland, I made stuff for the Dutch Nuclear Energy Institute and little sensor type plastic casings. I worked for an antenna factory. I worked in injection molding facilities. I've worked in big robots, the 5-axis machines that can move at 20 meters a second. These things can drill 50 holes in a block of metal, and they can drill it faster than you can count. And they're micron accurate. I worked in this field for quite a few years now. I wanted to change, so I went and worked as a maintenance guy in a chemical factory, and I hated that, and I went on to move where I'm now, which is I'm a call-out technician. They send me all over the country, and I go to factories and rip out bearings and chains and keep their production running. I've learned to keep my job and my private life well separate. So I don't care if I go out and shovel shit all day. I'll do that if they pay me enough. But when I get home, the real work starts here in the back cave.
Okay, let me ask you the next question there, Luke. Your handle, known to all of us, is Plays with Machines. How did you come up with that one?
That was kind of funny. That's the name I used on ATS, but it was purely I wanted a name that describes exactly what I do, and I wanted a name that is kind of And I was watching. We had that film Dances with Wolves.
Right.
What's
Kevin
his name?
Costner.
Yeah, and the Indians called him Dances with Wolves because that's what he did. And I think that's where the name came from. I mean, elsewhere on the net, I'm known as Brainstorm, which goes back to the 90s when I was making electronic music under the name of Brainstorm. If you check it out now, there's 5 or 6 bands. There's a DJ out of LA. There's a metal band. They're all called Brainstorm, but I was the first one back in '91.
Talk about music. What type of music do you make, or do you make it yourself, or sing it, or play instruments?
No, I've been using various different computer programs. I've got 7 computers here, so I use different computer programs and my own keyboard. I was playing keyboard for years. I don't hardly touch it now. And synthesizers. I was a big fan of Kraftwerk and Jean-Michel Jarre, and I make dance techno music. I made the music for my own YouTube videos because they were pulling down videos like I did a video on magnet motors and free energy and stuff. And what I saw was a lot of videos are getting pulled down because of copyright issues and certainly to do with the soundtrack. And I wanted to way around this. And so I produced my own music for the videos. So YouTube can't pull it on any copyright reasons. It's my own music. I launched a CD a couple of years ago, but I never sold it, so I kind of gave up on that.
Well, maybe we can see if we can get a track to play us out at the very end of this interview, okay? All right, I want to change subjects now, Luke. In your scientific work here, okay, what type of experiments do you like to do?
Oh, well, we've got so many to choose from.
What do you like to do best?
Well, I got distracted a couple of years back when we discovered all this Tom and Townsend Brown material. As you know, his daughter was there online, and I managed to take a lot of that material. And I thought, well, these are very basic experiments with a high voltage capacitor and a set of wires and stuff. So I built this and I tested it, and it worked. So that was kind of amazing. I got a success out of a very simple experiment, and I think, why the hell is other people not doing this? And people are doing this. My other favorite is free energy. By free energy, I mean so-called over unity devices, generators, if you will.
Right.
Again, it's a misnomer. It's not free energy. It's not free. This thing needs energy to run, but it gives out what an electrical engineer would think is 5 times more energy. It's giving out 5 times the energy you're putting in.
So it's very efficient.
Yeah, and to get it actually self-running, well, that's the next big step, because I'm stepping up the power levels. I did the first one back in the 90s, late 90s, and I was running a 1.2 watt lamp using 250 milliwatts. Okay, so it's proof to me that it works, but running a little lamp is nothing. You want to run a house. So I've been spending the last few years stepping up the power levels to where I can get 10, 20 kilowatts out of this thing to run a house.
Right. Best thing I could get is to run my air conditioning. That's my biggest cost. Well, Luke, let me ask you, what has been your best success to date? What do you think your best product has been, or your best project?
Oh, again, there's so many. The free energy one, which is the super inverter, is my top project right now. It's one I started back years ago. The cancer therapy machine is very high up on that list because it's more or less finished. It needs testing. My own personal favorite project is the Sense Test 2, because it's a product that there's a big gap in the market for that, and we can make some money out of that. And we've got a couple other things like Dr. Chris's little invention, the anti-gravity Townsend Brown experiment. I didn't get it right first time. I actually had the wires connected wrong.
Okay, on the joking side, hey, look, on the joking side, we've all seen cartoons of labs blowing up. Have you ever had any major explosive failures like you would see in the cartoons? Anything blow up, catch fire, burn down a house? Anything exciting ever happen?
What exciting happened is when I built the first one of these super inverters, and I tried to run it at a couple of 100 watts. And it went unstable. It went out of phase, and I got 50 times more energy than I should have got. So I was getting several kilowatts, and it melted 20 amp wiring.
Wow.
And I had a meter connected on the input from the battery, and the input never went above 2 amps, but it fried all the 20 amp components and the wiring on that board. So I got much more energy than I expected, which is now, if I'm working on a 10 kilowatt one, which will run a house, if that goes unstable, it will give out at least 50 times more, and we're going into the 0.5 megawatt range. That could be considered a disaster. I've had transformers catch fire, quite exposed. I've had big capacitors explode in my face. Apart from that, no serious explosions or accidents. I've had things go bang when I switch them on.
All right. Well, that's good. Let's talk. Who is your favorite inventor? Who do you idolize? Anybody?
I guess Tesla, because I was reading about Tesla back in the 70s when no one heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even today he's still misunderstood. Okay, now everyone knows who Tesla is, but they're still not sure, the far-reaching implications that one man can have. That's really amazing to me. I mean, he's the most single person who has changed our world completely, and he's still being kind of tabooed. Like, what really annoys me is the Higgs boson thing and the Higgs particles, and we discovered this, and they're just rediscovering the ether. They're rediscovering scalar energy, and they're trying to put a new handle on it and claim it as theirs.
Right.
Which is, I posted in one of these threads. You want to go up to one of these guys and whisper Tesla in his ear and watch him cringe.
Well, I imagine in the United States, there's a lot of people that think Tesla is just a car. You have seen a new Tesla car out, right?
I love them.
Yeah.
But it's just a company. I don't think it's got anything to do with him or his family or his event. Some guy, back on the Brainstorm days on the YouTubers, I got in contact with the Yugoslavian guy who He said, I've got some more information about Tesla. The museum is down the road from me. If you come over, I'll like to be your guide, and I'll take you to the museum, and I'll
Right.
show you some of the papers that we have. This was kind of just after the whole Bosnian War, so it was all kind of checkpoints and stuff. I haven't got, but I've tried to contact him since then. I wish I knew his name. But anyway, that would be one chance in a lifetime to go over there to the Tesla Museum in Belgrade and meet this guy, because they're kind of being ignored by the West. They say, oh, they're communists or they're Hungarians. And Tesla was a Hungarian, right? He was a Yugoslav. Some of these guys, a lot of the world's best paranormal people come from there. Some of the top scientists come from there. I think a lot of the Russian scientists come from that area. People tend to think they're a backward farming country, and most of them are. Most of America is.
Okay, while we're on the subject of inventors, are there any fake inventors out there, like people on YouTube or on forums? Or
Many of them.
I mean, I go on YouTube, I can see like 500 free energy devices.
Oh, I spend a lot of time debunking them. I still get spam in my mailbox. We're selling you the plans for the Hendershot generator. They don't have anything from the Hendershot. I've got all the plans I can find on the Hendershot generator. So why are these guys selling me plans for something they already have? And anyone who sells plans is kind of suspicious, man. I mean, if you got a free energy damn thing sitting on the kitchen table, you're not going to sell the plans. You'll build the machine and you'll sell it.
Sure. Okay, Luke, I'd like to take this moment. We'd like to cut the commercial, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Welcome to thelivingmoon.com. Here you'll find many interesting topics presented by the best in their fields. Starting off with the owner, Zorgon, who runs the place. Follow the Honorable John Lear in his discussions as he ventures into the depths of our nearest neighbor's secrets, including his own set of alternative theories that the moon has an atmosphere and more gravity than expected. If you wish to step into one of the best forums on the planet, enter the Pegasus Research Consortium, where you might lose yourself in many a rabbit hole. Dig deep into moon and Martian anomalies. Follow the live LRO tracking system. Enter the Members Hall of Fame and discover stargates, scientific research, radio and video interviews of John Lear, future technologies, the wisdom of the ancients, image analysis work, study of the moon's bases and orbital craft. Continue with a tour through the electronic universe and anti-gravity studies of all kinds, and a huge collection of UFO studies past and present. And this is just a teaser. www.thelivingmoon.com is the place to do research on so many subjects it's hard to list them all. Don't forget to sign up. Membership is free, and all the good stuff is behind the membership curtain.
Okay, I'd like to welcome you back. The interview today is with PlaysWithMachines, better known to us as Luke. And when we left you, we were talking about any fake inventors or debunkers. And Luke, what do you have to say?
Well, yeah, sorry to say, there's a lot of it about. I got sucked into some of the early stuff when I was back with YouTube. That was amazing. We even found each other, because like every 100 of these free energy things on YouTube, maybe 2 of them are real, or 2 of them are work or are feasible, and 99% of it is bullshit. And it's always, the moment they start asking for money or funds or whatever, that's one of the things I've always funded my own projects, because then if I'm faking anything, then why am I pouring, so many thousand a year into it? I'm not asking for money.
Well, what about if you did a free energy device that would cost maybe 2 or 3 million euro to really make it work? I mean, we would need funding too, right?
Sure, but that would mean getting investors on board, and they want something out of it. And we're also into an area where it would be so easy to crash that project. I could give you a couple of examples, like General Motors and stuff, but where they would just buy out complete projects and then shelve them, or worse. So I'm thinking we go our own way with this. I've got a plan to fund this stuff. I am funding it, and so we've got maybe just enough to tip it to where we got working devices, and then we'll sell them. Sure, we will.
Okay.
Debunkers, yeah. There's a company called Steorn, Steorn. They're on the internet, and they did a presentation a couple of years ago. I've got the video. I've got all the documents that they had an over-unity motor. They had this motor that just kept spinning. What I found out very quickly was that, first of all, It doesn't. It's just a very, very efficient pulse motor. Second thing is that their physics is wrong. I knew that straight away. And the third thing is they actually stole some ideas from another guy I know about called Dan Quayle and another guy called Thane C. Hines, who actually have built some amazing machines. But Searle, I spent 10 years on Searle, and he's still kind of, we've got no decision one way or the other on that. I've got no actual proof that his machine works. It's a beautiful concept, and I went way into engineering, I even spy, but it's too difficult to replicate. We can't even look at replicating it. There are similar devices like Podlenkov and other guys who have got real results, so Searle is kind of out. Rossi, the ECAT, a faker. If you look into his past, he's got a lot of dubious business things. His calculations on the energy output are totally wrong. I can go into that, but there's a site called New Energy Times who got thermal engineers and analysis, and they did the same. They came to the same conclusion I did, which is he's got his calculations are wrong by a factor of 7.
Oh, that's a factor of 7?
Yes.
Wow.
It's giving him 7 times less energy than he claims. And that's very easy to calculate. He's claiming it's turning the water completely into steam, and it isn't. You've got wet steam and dry steam. You've got stuff that comes out of the kettle, you know. Right. It is not real steam. It's 1 or 2% real water vapor. What you're looking at is water droplets, little drops of water. Right. That's not real. We call dry steam. Dry steam is invisible. It's at 120 degrees and it will burn clean through your hand. I've worked with this stuff. And he wouldn't let anyone see the output of the generator. It went inconveniently down a pipe into a drain.
Right.
I'll tell you something about steam very quickly is to get that, 100 degrees water vapor steam takes so much energy. To turn it completely into steam takes 7 times more energy.
Now we're talking about...
These basic calculations are 100% water to steam, to actual dry steam. And that takes 7 times more energy than just boiling a kettle.
For the American friends, we're talking 100 degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're talking everything in Celsius. Make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I always use official SI units. You may want to go to Wiki and look up SI. It's just light the meter, kilogram, centimeter, what you'd call European. But I can do inches and pounds because I was brought up in that. I can work in both systems for you guys.
So let's back that up to like a steam locomotive. Are we talking wet or dry steam?
That's wet steam. That's no way. It's not really dry steam. A small amount of it is, but that's wet steam. It's not the kind of power that you get with dry steam.
Nuclear reactor, wet or dry?
Exactly. They're more dry steam. Yeah, they're using steam at 200 degrees and 500 pounds pressure. So it's nowhere near the steam you would like. Visible steam is not steam. It's just water vapor.
Right.
Real steam is dry and invisible. And the guys who work in the industry know this. Just like a hissing air sound if you've got a leak, but it's invisible. But it's a stream of superheated water molecules that will cut through you. In fact, they're even using plasma cutters based on that principle. But anyway, we won't go into that. Debunkers, yeah, there's a lot of it going around. In fact, there's another one that came out on YouTube with that coil with a little hard drive magnet glued to it, and there was a motor on it, and the guy was outside, and this motor was turning.
All right.
I did that. I reproduced that experiment, and I posted that on Peggy. It is bullshit. The only thing that would make that motor turn is if there was a very large transmitter nearby. So I'm thinking he was either standing next to a phone cell tower or a radio sender or even a very powerful CB burner. Because by looking at the shape of the coil, I reckon he had it on the shortwave. So he had like a CB burner and a car, and he was filming like he's out in the field and this thing's tapping energy. It's a fake. There's a lot of it about, but a lot of guys, I'm really sorry to say this, but a lot of guys are so ready to believe it. Like with Rossi. He's got a big fan base, if you like, but when you show them the figures and you explain to them that it doesn't add up, they already got to the point where they don't want to hear it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know there's a word for it.
Okay. During the break, Luke, we were talking about machines, and you wanted me to bring that back up when we got back on.
Yeah, because, I always call myself like an armchair scientist. I sit here and I read the books and stuff, but my passion is machines and building machines and machine concepts. And I like retro engineering. I like old-fashioned stuff. I like Victorian iron, which they can't reproduce even now. The Victorians had a way of making iron that would not rust, that was very strong, and even the most new compounds like GG7 iron, whatever they call it, it's GG8, and they're using they're trying to use nanoparticles to make better iron. They still haven't got the quality of the Victorian stuff. And I think I made a joke somewhere, well, the Victorian iron had the blood of small boys in it, and that's why it was stronger.
Okay. Yeah, we see that a lot in the movies where they'll dip the swords in blood too, so that's probably where that came from.
What I try to do with the invention, certainly with stuff that comes up on YouTube, I look at it in an analytical way and I say, is this feasible? And trying to base a simple experiment on to see if it works. And certainly with even mechanical stuff, I've seen some amazing things. I've seen some very big engineering blunders, made by people who get 10 times my salary. And I posted that on Pegasus as well. It's called Bad Engineering, I believe. How not to do it.
Look, let's take a change here. On Pegasus, you're the group leader of an area called Inventors Group. Can you please let the audience, what is this all about? Tell us, what do you do there? What do people do in the Inventors Group?
Is what that when I first arrived and Zorgon offered me, he said, do you want your own little area where the inventors can chat and, not be disturbed? So I said, fine. So, and I could choose the people in there, or we would pick out people that stood out, kind of like we did with the YouTube group. I would go to someone's YouTube page and look at his films and maybe send him a mail and chat with him. And he said, yeah, I want to do this. And I'm thinking, okay, I've got maybe information that can help you. I've got plans and books, and take a look at this. And it kind of works like that. People send me stuff that blows my socks off, anonymously, or members or ex-members or whatever. I get mails and letters even, and it's just amazing stuff. And I'm trying to glue it all together. I want to get the inventors, which they've got now, their own little space. We've got a set of projects. We're trying to get people project orientated. I want a team working on lifters. I want a team working on gravity. I want a team working on anything you think, time travel. I mean, the list of stuff is endless. I've got work for 500 people.
Okay, let's talk about people. Commonly in electronics, we have beginners, mid-range people, and experts.
Yes.
How can a beginner, somebody who maybe just bought their first soldering iron, how can somebody like that start to become interested and into the Inventors Group?
Well, yeah, that's something I noticed straight away, or at least back in the beginning. That some guys are rocket scientists and some guys are auto workers. They actually did the guy who did the Stan Mayer thing with the low level one with the jam jars. We had to teach him basic electronics to be able to fool the onboard computer in the car. So we did diagrams and showing how things work. And I realized what we want to do is get all the members to the same level at least, and that's why I started something called the Electronic for Dummies thread. I believe that should be in the IG public area, so Pegasus members can see it.
Yes, I've read that thread.
Okay, I've been trying to update that thread and stuff like how to rip transformers. Remember, a lot of stuff I do is recycling. I misuse common household appliances. There's no need. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You see what I mean? If you want a high voltage transformer, go look in a microwave. Go look at a TV. Go look in a computer monitor. They got high voltage transformers in them. And with a little bit of rewiring, you can do interesting things with them. It's kind of like back engineering stuff that already exists. So it's kind of how to rip and hack stuff. It's not, you don't have to invent stuff. There's different kinds of inventors. You've got tinkerers. Most inventors are just tinkerers. They're playing with stuff and they kind of discover something more or less by accident. You've got thinkers and philosophers, and they're the guys who, are doing heavy on the math and they come up with a theory. And you've got builders, and they're kind of a mix. They're kind of engineers who have got the hands to put it together, and maybe a couple of brain cells to read the math. And so I guess that's where I am. But we got a couple of good builders, and we got a couple of good theory guys. We got guys like Matrix Traveler, who has got knowledge that I can only describe as being out of this world.
Yes, that's one way of putting it. Yes, I like Matrix very much.
We got top input. I'm still amazed every day by the input from our members and by the information that just turns up. And yeah, as you know, we got like 80,000 pages of material and a lot of links in there. We've got a big database. I've got my own database, which is pushing 300 gigabytes. I haven't even got 1% of it out there yet. So it's going to be fun.
Well, let's get back to the beginners for a minute. I noticed that you had posted a nice book for beginners. It's called The Electrical Book for Beginners. And I would suggest that if anybody's just starting up into tinkering or beginning with electronics, to look for that book on the site and download it and print it out. I have, and I've read it from cover to cover now. It's a very interesting book. Answers a lot of simple questions.
Yeah. I want to update that thread. In fact, there's 2 books there now. There's also a thread next door to it called Electronic Discussions. So if anyone's got any questions or any ideas or how can I do this, then post it there, and either me or one of the other guys who knows about it will get back to you. So yeah, it's getting everyone up to the same level. No question is too dumb. A lot of people, they send me a private message and they say, well, I wanted to post about this, but I don't want to post it because guys are going to laugh at me. And I have to keep telling you, no one's going to laugh at you. No question is too dumb. We will explain it if we can, or we'll give you some alternative theories. Go look at this, go look at that, make up your own mind. But no, we don't. No one gets laughed at here. We look at everything quite seriously. We have a lot of fun as well.
Look, while we're on the subject of books, let us in on it. What are some of the electronics books you like? What's your library look like? Who do you like to read?
Well, I've got 3 of them right in front of me now. Oh, and they're from the same publisher, and I'm going to give, this is called Babani Publishing, Babani, or Babani Books. They're out of Australia, I think. They still exist.
Right.
Oh, Babani Publishing Limited, the Grampian Shepherd's Bush Road, London. So they're probably in London, but this is way back in, this is from 91. It's called How to Use Op Amps. And it's all about operational amplifiers, what they are, how they work, how to use them. A lot of great little circuits in there. Let's see, low-pass filters, optical links, how to build this, how to build that, window detector circuit, mic gain, servo controllers, you name it. This is very interesting. So maybe, and these cost like $5, I think they're very cheap, $5 or $10, little books. They got over 200 of these books, op amps, computers, 555, transistor circuits, diodes and relays. Great books. I'm sure, in fact, I did post a link to this company in the electronic thread or in the Electronics for Dummies. I posted a lot of links to sites where you can go for information. A lot of it is free. Okay. And these little books are just great. I've had these books since the 80s, and in fact I still have to go back to them to remember, when I'm building some of my own circuits. Yeah, it's a learning curve, and it's not as difficult as people think. You don't need a PhD. You don't have to memorize tons of equations. You need a soldering iron and a simple multimeter. And again, I rip stuff. It's all second-hand components, a lot of it. The only thing I need to buy is the chip itself, and they cost $2. Off you go. Okay. I'm trying to get 2 work groups running. I've got a public work group, which is at this level for people to learn about electronics and mechanics and machines and just about anything you want to learn about. I've got a huge database, so all I've got to do is post it, and you guys can read it. And we've got the private group, which is going way ahead into, anti-gravity, time travel, that kind of thing.
Next century stuff, yeah.
Esoteric, I call it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the esoteric machines.
Do you have any one book in your collection that you would consider the best reference book for inventors or electricians? Is there any one that sticks out in your mind that you seem to always go to?
I've got what I call my Bible, which is the A to Z of chips. That's just like list of numbers. Tells you how many pins, how many volts, and what it does. Call it my Bible. No, I guess I've got some really interesting Tesla books. I got a first edition of a book from about the oil crisis, published by the what was then the Trilateral Commission. What they call it, CFR. I've got a first edition from the CFR, which explains why they're going to occupy the Middle East, and this was published in late 60s, I believe. That's my treasure book. My reference book I would suggest, and certainly for the inventors, is not an actual book. It's a PDF file. It's called the J.P. Kelly book, and it is an encyclopedia of inventors and free energy and anti-gravity projects. And basically every great inventor is in there, and a lot of unknown inventors like Hendershot and Newman, Bedini, Sir Henry Moray, all these guys. I think Dollard may be in there. There's over 200 or 300 inventors, and their machines and their inventors and their patents are all listed in this book. It is on Pegasus. I posted the link. I'll have to post it again.
Is that link out in the open someplace where we can get to it?
I can't remember, Dwayne.
Okay, do us a favor. Find out. See if it's buried behind the magic curtains or if it's out in the open.
It should be out in the open. It's about 60 megabytes. It's a huge book, but it's got all the. If you want to read about Moray or Newman or stuff like that, just it's in alphabetical order, and it's a great book. PJ Kelly. I have got it. I did upload it to my own data banks, and I'll post a link if it's not already there where should I post it? Inventors Group Public, somewhere out front. Okay.
Yeah, sure. I'm still one of those people that like to read paper, so if I catch a hold of a PDF like that, I'll print it out and make a book. I printed out your book for beginners too, and bound it.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
It's about 2,000 pages, this book, the Kelly one.
I have to get a thicker bind.
That's why I didn't print it out. If I should print out sections of it, but I just posted the whole damn thing up there on Peggy somewhere. It's on our own database, so it's not on an offline site. I'd been using cloud sites before, but then that site suddenly goes down and your link's gone, doesn't work, or something happens. I actually posted stuff on a site, and guys started telling me they were getting malware together with the files.
Right.
They were getting Trojans. So I said, okay, I'll post it directly to my own data bank on Pegasus. It's always there.
Okay, Luke, believe it or not, time has run out again. So I'm going to ask you to hold on to that thought, break to commercial.
Welcome to thelivingmoon.com. Here you'll find many interesting topics presented by the best in their fields. Starting off with the owner, Zorgon, who runs the place. Follow the Honorable John Lear in his discussions as he ventures into the depths of our nearest neighbor's secrets, including his own set of alternative theories that the moon has an atmosphere and more gravity than expected. If you wish to step into one of the best forums on the planet, enter the Pegasus Research Consortium, where you might lose yourself in many a rabbit hole. Dig deep into moon and Martian anomalies. Follow the live LRO tracking system. Enter the Members Hall of Fame and discover stargates, scientific research, radio and video interviews of John Lear, future technologies, the wisdom of the ancients, image analysis work, study of the moon's bases and orbital craft. Continue with a tour through the electronic universe and anti-gravity studies of all kinds, and a huge collection of UFO studies past and present. And this is just a teaser. www.thelivingmoon.com is the place to do research on so many subjects it's hard to list them all. Don't forget to sign up. Membership is free, and all the good stuff is behind the membership curtain.
Okay, and welcome back. This is section 3. We're going to continue our interview with PlaysWithMachines, Luke. Okay, in the last section we were talking about debunkers, but I mentioned fake debunkers. Can we go into fake debunkers, Luke?
Yeah, well, I guess what I call fake debunkers or professional debunkers. And, I've spotted a couple of these. I had a 300-page argument with one guy on YouTube. This went on for some time, and he was just out to blast anything that was in any way what we called free energy, which is, not truly over unity, but certainly some truly amazing machines. And he was out just debunk for the sake of debunking, because he believes in the standard model, and that's Einstein is God, and, you can't mention the word Tesla without these guys jumping down on you. And yeah, I had some good arguments with him. I got to develop the thick skin because of that, I suppose. But yeah, I have to play the debunker myself sometimes. Someone, people like Amy and other members, they send me links. Have you seen this? Let's check it out. and I check it out, and within a couple of days, I'm thinking, it either works or it doesn't, and what I'm looking at here is fake.
So it seems that we have some professional people out there that we would call professional debunkers. Maybe they own the electric company. And by the way, we've been trying to get connected up to Amaterasu Solar or Amy for quite a while now. We're not having any luck, so we're going to try to get her in on the next section. And Luke, talking to you, we could probably put 20 CDs together with you. So
we've got a lot. We have stuff.
A long ways to go.
Oh yeah, this would be a whole series.
Yeah. Let me see.
Well, debunkers, I would say disinfo and misinfo. These guys that are out there that like deliberately confusing people. It's a form of debunking, if you like.
Okay. Oh, by the way, offline we were talking about your lab, okay? And I hear, for the audience, this pretty cool name. You have a name for your lab. Care to share it with everybody?
Yeah, it's called the Bat Cave.
Okay.
It's actually my third or fourth Bat Cave. I've had to move. I've got about 7 or 8 tons of equipment, electrical stuff, transformers, computers, power supply, scopes, meters, junk.
Junk, yeah. I think all inventors have a big pile of that.
Quite a few lasers. Yeah, I mean, I don't throw anything out. That's kind of a problem, but I strip it right down to the nuts and bolts, and even now I keep the nuts and bolts. I recycle everything. I've amazed, I've dragged old pieces of equipment out of the scrap, and I've took the transistors and the stuff out, and I went online and I looked up the price of these things. The ones I've got here, they're about $800 each.
Euros or dollars?
Dollars.
Dollars, okay.
$100 each. I've got about 6 of them, and I got them for free. That's kind of an abundance thing for me. I've got an abundance of electronic stuff. And it's free. This is one thing I'm really pushing in for the inventors. Certainly the start, or what you like, the tinkerers, the beginners. I post tips. I normally post these tips in like a glowing blue. And this is a tip from, hey, you can rip this and you can do this. And little tricks.
Hey, look, can you explain for some of us, when you say use the word rip, what do you mean? Taking things apart? Rip it apart?
Oh, sure.
Like what would you do? Take a TV and do what?
I would dismantle TVs when I was 12 years old, just to see how it works or what was in there. I did this with cars, lawnmowers, coffee machine, you name it. Normally, sometimes I get something new and I take it apart just to see what makes it tick, and hopefully if I can get it back together again. Yeah,
well, if you're like me, when you put it back together again, there's always a few parts sitting on the table saying, "Oops."
Yeah, I realized you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If I want a certain component, there's one laying around right next to me in a radio or TV or whatever. So yeah, I like to reuse or let's say use components that were not originally. I'll give you a good example. You want a vacuum pump, get an old freezer and get someone who's got the apparatus to suck the gas out, because it's CFCs. You don't want to release it into the atmosphere, so you pump the gas out completely, you suck it down to a vacuum, and then you let the air in, and you've got a very good vacuum pump, very powerful vacuum pump from an old freezer compressor. And if you use the output line, then you've got a compressor. So,
okay.
Little tricks, stuff like this. I tend to post a lot of tips, like how to rip transformers, how to easily dismantle transformers and get the copper wire out of them. I guess I'm not doing this on purpose, but I'm kind of thinking like a Mad Max scenario, when there's no technology anymore, there's nothing working, and you need to build a radio, for example. And there's plenty of stuff laying around to help you to build a radio. It's just a bit of basic knowledge to get you to do it. So yeah, I'll try to keep it like that. I'll try to keep it anything I design, I try to use back engineering. I try to use off the shelf, what they call COTS, current off the shelf items.
Do electronic items matter if they've got thousands of hours on them already, or if it works, it works?
Some components, semiconductors will basically live forever. Magnets have got a certain lifetime depending on atmospheric conditions or use, or if you don't store them correctly. Capacitors are the problem. Capacitors, especially the big, what we call electrolytic capacitors, the big energy storage ones, they got a certain lifetime, like 10, 20 years. So I'm thinking if you build these things, and the only component you've got to worry about is the capacitors every 10 years. But that's a small price to pay for the amount of energy we're playing with. And this is a stopgap maneuver. These are kind of like small inventions that we can get out now while we're waiting for the big stuff like fusion.
I heard, and I've also read, that you do a lot of work with T.T. Brown experiments. Have you had any successes with them yet?
Yes. In fact, I did a total of, I think, 4 experiments, and 3 of them were successful. One of them was very successful. I got actual movement from this device. I was sending it 50,000 volt pulses, and it was jumping around. It didn't like fly off across the room, but it moved a couple of millimeters. But that's enough for me to prove that it works. The theory works. It's not iron wind, because there was no wind around. There was no. It was an enclosed, basically enclosed on 3 or 4 sides. So there was no wind, no movement, and it definitely moved. So I'm building a much bigger one and different materials.
Is there a name associated with that experiment?
I guess you call it the Gravitor experiment.
Okay.
Thomas Townsend Brown. Everyone knows about his flying discs, but he actually the flying disc came later. What he first made was this small thing called a Gravitor. It's about 8-10 inches long, small block made of composite materials, and he would give it 100,000 volts, and it would move. It would give a force in a certain direction.
Mm-hmm.
Up, down, left, right, didn't matter. It would go in the force of the positive plate. This is the B-field Brown effect. What I noticed, and what Paul, Dr. LaViolette did mention in his book, The Secrets of Anti-Gravity, I believe it's called, is that you need a big voltage gradient across this dielectric. And what the dielectric does, it stores charge and it releases charge very quickly. When you've got this big charge movement, or let's say it's a shock, it's a gravitational shock, it's actually warping space-time. You're creating a little gravity hill behind the object in the minus side, and you're creating a little gravity well in front of it. So the thing wants to fall downhill. This effect actually happens so quick you can't really see it. If you think of something like a UFO that just disappears in a blink of an eye, this effect certainly would explain it. Only it's on a much higher level, zillions of volts, thousands of watts.
Well, I'm sure we can do an entire section or a show on T.T. Brown.
I've started recreating these experiments, and a lot of them are very interesting. They branch off into a lot of different areas.
I want to talk about a little crazy subject here. It's about rocks, and as you know, I've done a lot of work with rocks also in my field. But Luke, what is up with FM rock?
FM rock, or rock FM, this was again taken from one of his other notebooks, that this electrogravity effect is a two-way effect. So like if you put 1 million volts into a certain kind of rock and it moves, because it's got a certain dielectric or whatever, the opposite is true. If a gravity wave comes into or through that rock, it will give a little electrical pulse, very tiny electrical pulse, and it is measurable, and you can pick them up. And what T.T. Brown was doing, he built like what you would call a crystal set, a radio. He was listening, and he actually found that these waves had changed with the time of year or the phase of the moon. The waves would tend to come from a general direction from the center of the universe, cosmic waves.
Okay.
He could have been picking up some kind of cosmic gravity wave. This has all been well documented. They've actually built gravity receivers in big kettles buried in salt mines, but the T.T. Brown method is so much easier. And I actually did a project called Rock FM, which is I recreated this tin box with two isolated holders in the middle and with a spring on there, and you could put a sample, like anything, a piece of metal, piece of wax, piece of wood, or a rock, in this holder, and then put 1,000 volts DC across it. So there's a very tiny current going through that rock. The current from that rock goes for a little transformer, like a radio transformer, one of these tiny little cores. In fact, I've got a switchable array, so I can switch in any frequency from VHF to UHF. So I can pick up and listen. And of course, if you can listen, you can also talk.
Look, is this any kind of rock, or is it a special rock?
It is certain kind of rocks.
Do you know?
I can't on the top of my head look at the names.
The rock, does it have to be polished rock, or is it just something you pick up off the driveway?
I've tried polished rocks, I've tried rough rocks, and I've tried quartz. Certain types of glass. This Pyrex glass is apparently another. Bo Kitzelman did a material analysis of a lot of the stuff that with the high, what they call a high K value, which is a high dielectric constant. Not to be confused with capacitors. The capacitance, which also have dielectrics, but you've got materials like barium titanate and more recently barium hafnium titanate, which has got a dielectric constant 50,000 times more than air. And what this means is if you coat this material onto a craft or something and you give it 500,000 volts, you'll probably get something like 40 tons of thrust in any direction.
How much?
At least 40 tons, and some estimates are 70 tons. If you look at the wingspan of a B-3,
Yeah.
The stealth bomber, the wingspan and the surface area, if you coat the underside of that and you have something called a flame jet generator, which we might get to, which is kicking out 500,000 volts at the back end of the plane, and it's the opposite, the plus end of the generator is connected via a special tube to the front of the plane, you've got a huge gravitor. You've got Thomas Townsend Brown's basic apparatus, but then the size of an aircraft with 500,000 volts. Paul Laviolette has done some calculations, and he has said if you've got this kind of power level, that thing can basically hover, and it can do Mach 8 instead of Mach 3 or whatever, 5, whatever they say it is, it can do double that. And it could also work in space.
Okay, Luke, we've only got several minutes more left to go in this interview, so I just want to bring up another name you mentioned earlier, Stan Meyer, HHO.
Yes, he was the pioneer of running cars on water back in the 70s, and he built this beach buggy and he drove it around the country, and he was trying to get this up and, sold on the market, and it was totally clean and you could breathe the exhaust. It was plain water. We've verified this. I've had two groups and they both verified this. We did a high-tech approach and we did a low-tech approach, and they both worked. I posted the threads and the patents, and the info is on Pegasus. It's even in a public area and in the Pegasus science area. He was beaten to the ground several times and he died from, apparently he was poisoned. But it's too late. Everything's out there, the patent's out there, and I know at least two guys who are replicating this right now. It works. This is a stopgap measure because you can convert any existing engine to run on water. And okay, maybe the engine's got a shorter life because the HHO is a bit acidic and it'll eat away at the engine, but who cares? Your fuel is free. Your fuel is just water, any kind of water. So you just buy, you get a new car every 3 years. In fact, you recycle the cars, you recycle everything. This is kind of just to tide us over until we get into the true over unity black box giving out 20 kilowatts scenario. Basically, I envision a future where every single machine or apparatus has got a built-in, maybe nuclear power source. We're getting that. I've seen designs for a nuclear battery, which is no bigger than a normal 9-volt battery.
Wow. Well, Luke, this has been a fantastic interview with you, and I thank you very much for dedicating a good portion of your life to doing this. And also, I believe that we're going to be publishing a DVD which has
extra materials
in it, including videos and photographs. And so, Luke, any last thoughts here? Because we're out of time already. Any last thoughts?
Well, we've been held back for at least 150 years, and now it's time to take a 150-year leap forward, at least catch up with the military. This should get out to the public. We need this, and we need it now. Okay.
So that's what we're going to be talking about the next time. I'm 100% positive we need to do more interviews with you, Luke. You up for it?
I would love to do this because we need to push the program forward and get more people involved.
And this has been your host, Dwem, interviewing Plays with Machines. Peggy, take me home.